the sisters can come up. The barrier has been put. Please come to the front section. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كلامه المجيد والفرقانه الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ثم أورثنا الكتاب الذين اصطفينا من عبادنا فمنهم ظالم لنفسه ومنهم مقتصد ومنهم سابق بالخيرات بإذن الله ذلك هو الفضل الكبير. جنات عدن يدخلونها يحلون فيها من أساور من ذهب ولؤلؤا ولباسهم فيها حرير. وقالوا الحمد لله الذي أذهب عنا الحزن إن ربنا لغفور شكور الذي أحلنا دار المقامة من فضله لا يمسنا فيها نصب ولا يمسنا فيها لغوب. صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, as we reflect on the horrible and ongoing tragedy that is occurring in Gaza and Palestine, and we continue to be afflicted and saddened and horrified that the world has still not come to its senses, just to be able to say that let's stop the killing, right? Let's stop this bloodshed. Let's stop the the upending of these innocent lives, right? So on the one end, we're horrified as an ummah of what is occurring in the midst of this tragedy. Also, at the same time, the world has never seen, especially in the 21st century, the uptaking and also the positive coverage and the positive upliftment of this tragedy. You know, subhanAllah, this is just from a few days ago. It is mentioned that the TikTok analytics has over 30 billion views. 30 billion views of the hashtag Islam, right? So imagine how much more people are interacting with this. People are, just amazed by the iman and the courage that these people are showing, our brothers and sisters in Gaza, the dedication and the resiliency that they have. People are amazed and awed by this. That what is this thing that they possess? They don't possess any material means. They have been cut off from fuel, from water, electricity, all of the basic necessities of life. And their families are being killed, and the children are being dragged out from underneath the rubble, and the dead bodies and the demolition of all of the buildings and the infrastructure. How is it that these people are still able to continue on? And the world is just amazed by this. And so many non-Muslims are now, exploring, and they are now researching about Islam, and they're researching about the Quran. Because this is an astounding faith, right? This must be, a religion, or this must be, there must be some power behind it, right? That's what they're looking at. And that is what has caused them to do this. And they're coming out with YouTube videos and reactions and sharing, so many of them are sharing their journey that they have found Islam and they have discovered Islam and they have read the Quran. And people, it's just something that is just amazing. So following that, I just wanted to reflect in tonight's dars and halaqah on 4 ayahs from Surah Al-Fatir. Ayah number 32, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the 3 levels of believers, the 3 levels of Muslims. Who are these? Number 1, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثُمَّ أَوْرَثْنَا الْكِتَابَ الَّذِينَ اصْطَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. Right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we bequeath, right? Meaning that we gave over in inheritance, what? The book. Meaning that all of the divine scriptures that were revealed, including the final scripture, the Quran, who is the inheritor of that? It is the believer, it is the Muslim, right? And truly, if you look at that, right? If you look at the past scriptures, you look at the Torah, the Zabur, the Injil, right? Right? The true teachings of the Torah, the Zabur, and the Injil are implemented by the Muslims, right? The Christians and the Jews themselves don't even practice on their own, right? The Quran, the Muslims are the one group of religious people who not only follow upon the Quranic injunctions, but those injunctions that are found in the previous scriptures as well. So this is truly, an inheritance that has been achieved and that has been received by the Muslims, right? This is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we really need to treasure and we really need to, interact with more and more, because the solution for the for any problem in life lies in the Quran. The more stronger of a connection that we have with the Quran, the more that we will have the resiliency and the capability to be able to deal with any problem that the world throws at us. And that is the reality of it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ اصْطَفَيْنَا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. Not only are these people just random people, right? Allah says that these are hand-selected people. People who are Muslim, they're not just simply Muslim because they felt like being Muslim. They're not Muslim because they were born into a Muslim family. They're not just Muslim because, they filled out an application and they chose, I think this is something that makes sense to me. Okay, I'm going to be a Muslim, right? It is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hand-selected and hand-picked each and every Muslim to be a Muslim, and not only that, to be from the Ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? As we know, and we've discussed this in the previous, every Nabi of Allah, every Prophet of Allah made dua to be the Nabi of the last Ummah. And they said, Ya Allah, make me the Nabi of the last Ummah, and if not, make me a follower of the last Ummah. And we know that the dua was only granted to whom? Right? The dua, obviously the nubuwah, the prophethood was given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to be a follower of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the dua was granted for whom? For Isa alayhi salam. That when Isa alayhi salam comes back, right, he will be an ummati, a follower from the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that from amongst these believers, who are these believers? Those that are born, one is those that are born Muslims, and they are raised, up as Muslims, and they treat their Islam as something that is a gift, and they learn about it, they research, and they live their lives according to, Islam, and they die upon that. Right? That is one category of Muslims. The other Muslims are those whom that they did not possess the religion when they were born, but they were introduced to it at a later period in life. And they chose that religion as the ultimate religion, as the ultimate way of life, and they died upon that. These are the Muslims. Right? Nowadays, there's this push for what? For perennialism. To give this idea that all religions are okay. They're all hanky-dory. Everyone is you just have to be a good person. All religions are good. All religions are true. All religions are like this. All religions are like that. But no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say that. Right? Inna ad-deena inda Allahi al-Islam. The only religion that is acceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Islam. وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. Anybody that is seeking any other way of life, any other religion, any other thought process besides Islamic thought, besides the monotheism that Islam preaches, besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is something that will not be accepted from this person. And they will realize the effect of that and the reality of that, where وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. That these are the people that in the day of judgment they will realize the gravity of their choices. Right? So, from these believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. Number one is those that oppress and that do dhulm upon themselves. They oppress themselves through what? Committing sins. Right? And this is the vast majority of Muslims. Right? Those that commit sins, they firmly believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, when it comes to the practice of Islam, right, maybe some of them are leaving out their fard. A person is not praying. A person is sometimes praying, sometimes not praying. A person is sometimes fulfilling their fara'id, sometimes not. A person is, steeped in sins. Sometimes a person commits, major sins. Sometimes a person eats haram. Sometimes a person is doing something that they're not supposed to do. So, ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. And here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala beautifully describes this. That when a person commits a sin, it's not that Allah is making them do that sin, that Allah is oppressing them. Rather, they are oppressing themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another place in the Quran, وَمَا ظَلَمْنَاهُمْ وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. That we didn't oppress them. We didn't, make them, evil. We didn't cause them to go astray. But rather, they are the ones that caused them, and they made that mistake themselves. You can't blame Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same way that when you are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for hidayah and guidance, and you're not doing anything about it, how do you expect the change to come within yourself? The change doesn't simply come by you asking Allah to give you hidayah and you don't do anything about it. No, a person has to work for it. A person has to make that effort. A person has to strive. A person has to sacrifice. Right? Because Jannah is not cheap. Right? And that's why you have to strive. So the first category are those that oppress themselves through committing sins. وَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ. The second category are those who are on the medium level, right? The mid-tier. And what is the what is the definition of that? Is that a person fulfills all of their fara'id, right? In the mid-tier, a person fulfills all of their obligations. A person prays, a person fasts, they give zakat, they perform their hajj and all of this. However, when it comes to anything beyond the minimum, beyond the fara'id, a person is weak. Maybe they're not praying their sunnah. Maybe the person is not fulfilling their nawafil. The person is committing sins and maybe they're not too quick about making tawbah. A person, sometimes a person is not looking to do more than what is necessary. So this is the medium tier. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the last and the best category, وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Those that compete with one another in goodness by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anytime they see something good, anytime there's an opportunity, I want to be the first to donate. I want to be the first person to, commit this good action. I want to memorize the Quran. I want to be in the first saf when it comes to the prayer. I want to be a person who spends more time, doing dua after the prayer, for example. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another place in the Quran, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. And in this, those that would like to compete, they should be competing in this. Right? They should be competing with one another in doing good deeds, in earning Jannah. You want to talk about competition. You want to talk about doing well in the business, market. You want to talk about doing good in the stock market. You want to talk about if anyone is in the real estate business, if anyone is in, in any other field or area, people talk about competing with one another. People compete in sports, people compete in other activities, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. If you truly want to compete for something, then compete in religion, compete in goodness, compete in sacrifice, compete in earning your way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the more sacrifice that you will put, the more reward that will be there from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment. Right? So, what I wanted to discuss is the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises, right? Let's break down these categories first and foremost. فَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. The first category are those of the sinners, right? As I mentioned, these are the majority of the Muslims, right? These are the majority of the Muslims. And sometimes, subhanAllah, it's hard to, be able to be in a position to advise them. But I have something that I wanted to share about this category. Maybe it is related to our children. Maybe it is related to our loved ones. There are some people amongst the Muslim community that because of their ibadah, because of their level of worship, because, a person is able to do certain things by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we began to develop the superiority complex. And anybody that is not on the same level that we are on, right, then, we begin to view them as bad Muslims. We begin to, look down upon them. We begin to, subhanAllah, scold them. Even maybe it's our kids sometimes, maybe it's our children, right? But we are so harsh with them that we end up driving them away from Islam instead of bringing them closer to Islam. Right? This is something that a person has to be very, very careful about. Because the vast majority of Muslims fall within the category where a person is committing sins, or a person is not so strong in their Islam, a person is not strong in their deen. But the true Muslim is not that person who will judge other people. Rather, the person will look for the sincere way to advise another person. You look for the sincere way to give advice. You give that advice with love. You look for different ways and techniques that you can get into. Otherwise, what happens? There's a hadith of Sahih Muslim, right? That there are two people, right? Two brothers or two people, right? And one of them was righteous and the other one wasn't so righteous. And what happened? The person who was righteous, he was advising and advising and advising, until a point came where he became tired. He became tired and he said that Allah will never forgive you. He told the other person that Allah will never forgive you. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ said that on the Day of Judgment, these two people will be brought. And Allah will ask, أَيْنَ الَّذِي يَتَأَلَّى عَلَيَّ? Who is that person who chose to become a judge on my behalf? Where is that person that chose to become a judge on my behalf? Who told you that I would not forgive him? Who told you? And then subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that that person who was the quote-unquote religious and righteous person, this is the person that will be sent to the hellfire, and the person who was quote-unquote a sinner, this is a person that will be sent to Jannah. So this is something that serves as a great reminder for us, that when it comes to dealing with people, when it comes to advising, when it comes to giving da'wah, when it comes to preaching about Islam, we need to be very careful. We need to be very, very careful. Right? The Prophet ﷺ taught us, Bashiru wa la tunaffiru. Give glad tidings to people. Don't just drive them away. Right? Bashiru. Give people glad tidings. Tell them about good things. Make them happy. Make them feel motivated. Make them feel, that they can do anything. Right? Give them the glad tidings. Give them good news. Tell them about what Allah has kept for them in terms of the reward and Jannah and all of that. Right? And even if you have to share negative news with someone, if you have to share about the punishment of the grave, you have to share about the punishment of of the hellfire, you have to share something negative, find a way to share it that it doesn't drive a person away. Find a way to share that news that it doesn't drive the person away. يَسِّرُوا وَلَا تُعَسِّرُوا. Make it easy for the people and don't make it hard for the people. Right? The ulama and the scholars, they mention that when it comes to, giving good advice, then we should give good advice, or we should call people towards good with goodness. And when it comes to repelling evil, nahi anil munkar, we should repel the evil without the evil. Sometimes we try to repel the evil, but instead of repelling the evil, we bring more evil into it. And this is something that causes so much of damage. It causes people to go away from Islam. It causes people to go away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One time I was listening to this lecture by Sheikh Hakim and he was mentioning that there was this, this is like years, a few decades ago, that there was this British woman who married, a person from Jordan or some other place, and her husband was Muslim. And so, by the virtue of her husband being Muslim, she slowly started to research about Islam. Right? She didn't know a lot. But what happened was that one day she had this, sibh in her hand, tasbih. And she was doing some tasbih. And a person who was harsh in the religion, right? What did this person come and do? They came and ripped this tasbih out of that woman's hand, and they said that this is bid'ah, and this is like this and like that, and this is haram, and this is whatever. And they completely tore that tasbih. And the person, subhanallah, who was basically maybe either on the verge of accepting Islam or had just very newly accepted Islam, they said that after that day, subhanallah, they wanted nothing to do with the religion. They don't want to do any research. They didn't want to learn the Quran. It's acts like this that we might think to ourselves that it's something small. But in that one moment, it literally destroys the other person's life. Like, this happens so frequently that people are coming. Let them come as they are coming. We need to be able to have some rahmah. We need to be able to have, this mercy that we extend and that we cultivate and that we display to others. So having that sympathy, having that love, and displaying that kindness, this is something that is absolutely crucial. فَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has actually put this category of people from amongst the Muslims. And after these ayat and verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that these are the people of Jannah. No matter how much we may think otherwise and how much we may want to condemn such people, right? But Allah Himself is mentioning that this category will be from amongst the people of Jannah. They might have a difficult time giving hisab in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment. They might have a difficulty that they might have to go to Jahannam for a little bit, in the worst case scenario. But at the end of the day, Allah will have them taken out of Jahannam and they will go to Jannah. These are the people of Jannah. Right? So we need to be very, very careful about this. And the advice that I have for those people that find themselves in this category is that we don't want to remain in this category. The idea is that when you have such goodness in front of you, there's, mashallah, for those that love, they have a sweet tooth and they love desserts. Somebody tells you that there's a 7-layer, triple chocolate cake, right, as a dessert. Right? Which person wouldn't want to go and take a piece from there? Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us the example of Jannah. Allah is giving us the news that He has prepared such a place which will never end. It will never end, and there will be no worry, no anxiety, nothing negative that will exist over there. How is it that a person can still remain in such a category where they're just doing the bare minimum, right? And maybe even sometimes the bare minimum is slipping away, right? So don't be comfortable sitting in this category, because bearing Jahannam is not something that is pleasant. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is what? That on the day of judgment, there will be two people that will be brought. Number one will be the person who was the most prosperous and happy person on the surface of this earth. This person will be taken and they will be dipped in Jahannam for one split second. And they will be brought out. And Allah will ask them, did you ever experience any goodness in your life ever? And the person will take the oath and the qasam. And they will say that, وَبِعِزَّتِكَ وَجَلَالِكَ يَا Allah, by your majesty and your honor, I never ever experienced any happiness, any goodness in my life. Right? That is the comparison of the life of this world and what the akhirah contains. And similarly, a person who experiences the most amount of difficulty on this earth, poverty, difficulty, sickness, sadness, grief, depression, this is the person that will be brought and they will be dipped in Jannah, in paradise, for a split second. And then when they are removed, Allah will ask them, but did you experience any pain or difficulty in your life? And the person will say, وَبِعِزَّتِكَ وَجَلَالِكَ يَا Allah, by your majesty and your honor, I never ever experienced any negative thing in my life. So why would we ever want to remain in that category where there is a potential for a person to go to Jahannam, even if it's for a short while? Right? The aspect of it is that a person should always strive to be better. So what is the outcome for the people of the first category? That they will be, that their hisab, right? Their hisab and their accounting will take longer. Why? Because they will be arguing back and forth with Allah. Allah will say, you did this. Say, Allah, I didn't do this. Right? Back and forth, back and forth. And each and everything will be scrutinized then. Right? And then some, Allah will forgive some of them, and some of them will have to go to Jahannam, and they will have to bear out the punishment, and then afterwards they will be taken out. The second category that we have, وَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ, those that are, in the middle path. The minimum thing that they're doing is that they're fulfilling all of their obligations. All of their obligations. Right? They're praying their 5 daily obligatory salah. They're performing hajj. They're giving their zakat. They're fasting in the month of Ramadan. Right? All of their obligations are met. And occasionally when they fall into sin, maybe they're not really that fast to do tawbah. They will do tawbah, but it takes them a while to do that tawbah. These are people who also consider minor sins to be minor. They say that this is just a minor sin. Right? There are people who will probably say that this is just sunnah. Okay, it's a sunnah, I don't want to do it. Right? There are people who will fall into the makruhat, those things that are disliked. Right? Those things that are close to the line of haram, they will be falling into that. However, these are the people, because of the fact that they are fulfilling their obligation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ فَيَقُولُ هَاؤُمُ اقْرَءُوا كِتَابِيَهْ وَفَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ فَسَوْفَ يُحَاسَبُ حِسَابًا يَسِيرًا. That those people that will be given their book of deeds in their right hands, these are the people that they will have an easy hisab, a light hisab, which means that Allah will deal with them in a bulk way. Right? Some of them, Allah will just show them their sins, but there will be no dialogue back and forth. So you just see everything, you get scared, you get scared, you get scared, but at the end of it, when the book is closed, no problem, you can go. Or there's no detail to the scrutiny. It's not that every single sin is being scrutinized by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, Allah is dealing with them with their collective sins and their collective good deeds. Allah is dealing with them in this manner. And then you have the last category of people, وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Those people that are striving to do everything, right? More than what is required of them. The person is getting up for the tahajjud. The person is particular about their, nawafil. The person, in the morning time, the person, is reciting 1,000 Subhanallah wa bihamdihi subhanallah al-azim. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that whosoever does morning and evening 100 times subhanallah wa bihamdihi subhanallah al-azim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the reward of 1,000 rewards. Right? These are the people that, mashallah, on a daily basis, they say subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar 500 times. How do we do this? After the salah, you do subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah 33 times, and you follow that up with what? La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la, lahul mulku wa lahul hamd, wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. You do the math. 33 times, 33, and once, la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la, it is 500. You're doing this tasbih. If you do it after every salah, you end up doing 500 tasbih a day. Right? These are the people, subhanAllah, whenever it comes for an opportunity to donate, whenever it comes for an opportunity to volunteer, whenever it comes for an opportunity for a good cause, they're the first people to step up and say that I'm ready. I'm the one that wants to do this. Right? And these are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and on the other hand, when it comes to, benefiting other people, when you sit in the company of such people, you gain knowledge, you gain something of benefit. Right? These people are such people that they're humble. Right? When you sit in their presence, you don't feel judged. You don't feel like you're threatened. Al-mu'minu man aminahu nasu ala dima'ihim wa amwalihim. Right? That when you sit in their presence, you feel secure, you feel happy, you don't feel judged, you don't feel like, this is a person that, I feel like I'm forced to sit with this person. No, they're very easygoing people. Right? They humble themselves, they lower themselves. It's not a person sitting there, arrogantly. Man tawadda'a lillahi rafa'ahu Allah. Because these people, they understand that whosoever will humble themselves for the sake of Allah, Allah will elevate them. Right? These are people that love other people for the sake of Allah, and they hate other people for the sake of Allah. They can get angry at you it's very hard to make them angry. But even if they end up getting angry at you, maybe they're angry at you from one angle, but they love you from the other angle. Right? These are the people that, subhanAllah, when they want to give advice, they think and rethink and rethink and rethink. How should I do this? How should I give advice? Should I cancel this person? Should I call them out in public? Or should I take them, for a nice meal? Should I take them in a place where they will be happy? Should I do something for them? Should I give them a gift? And then after I give them that gift, then I can sit down and then I can approach them in such a way that I'm not giving my advice while it seems like I'm attacking them. Right? While it seems like I'm attacking them. Rather, I'm giving the example. There was an incident. The grandsons of the Prophet ﷺ, Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, one time they saw an elderly man who was making wudu and he wasn't doing wudu correctly. Right? What did they do? Did they go to him, we're the grandsons of the Prophet ﷺ, you're doing wudu incorrectly? What did they do? They went to him and they said, oh uncle, my brother and I, we were arguing about how to do wudu. Right? Can we perform wudu in front of you and you can check us? And you can tell us which one is right? Allahu Akbar. And so they perform wudu in front of this elderly man, and he then understands that what I was doing was incorrect. Allahu Akbar. Look at the methodology of teaching, of giving advice. Imagine that. Right? Imagine when you give advice like this, how much a person will love you, how much a person will care about you. And this is what this category of people, they're worried about standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one day and having to give hisab an account. These are the people that stay away from haram, they stay away from makruhat. They're always particular about not only doing their fara'id, but doing their nawafil, doing their mustahabbat, even those preferred actions. Sometimes even those things which are permissible, but they're not considered to be of the higher level, they will leave out those things, the mubahat. وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Those people that are racing with one another in what? Towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In achieving the rida and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In achieving Jannah, in achieving success with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're competing with one another. Right? We know the famous hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wherein some of the poor Sahaba, they came and they complained to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Rasulullah, ذهب أهل الدثور بالأجور. That, Ya Rasulullah, our rich brethren, they have, surpassed us in getting good rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? That they have money and they use that money to give charity. We don't have money, we are poor. Ya Rasulullah, what do we do? And so the Prophet ﷺ taught them to do the tasbih. Right? To do the tasbih, to glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what happened? The rich people heard about the tasbih and they started doing that too. So then they come back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, they learned about the tasbih too now. What do we do? And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. This is the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whosoever He gives it to, this is His will. But the fact of the matter remains is that they were always competing with one another. Not in the matters of the dunya, but they were competing with one another in the matters of the akhirah. The dunya for them was nothing. SubhanAllah, the dunya for them was nothing. It is mentioned that in one story that there was a poor person that came, right, to the three princes, I should say, Al-Hasan, Al-Hussein, and Abdullah ibn Ja'far, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, right? That they came and Al-Hasan gave him one amount. And when he came to Al-Hussein, he asked him, what did Al-Hasan give you? He said that he gave me this amount. He gave him more than that. And when he goes to Abdullah ibn Ja'far, right, then they asked that, what did the previous two give you? So that they gave us this amount. He gave them even double of what they had given. So وَمِنْهُمْ سَابِقٌ بِالْخَيْرَاتِ. They were always competing with one another for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? The جَنَّاتُ عَدْنٍ يَدْخُلُونَهَا يُحَلَّوْنَ فِيهَا مِنْ أَسَاوِرَ مِنْ ذَهَبٍ وَلُؤْلُؤًا وَلِبَاسُهُمْ فِيهَا حَرِيرٌ. Allah has prepared the Jannah and the paradise for them. These paradises are everlasting. Right? These paradises are everlasting. They will enter into it. يُحَلَّوْنَ فِيهَا مِنْ أَسَاوِرَ مِنْ ذَهَبٍ وَلُؤْلُؤًا. And they will be adorned with gold and with pearls. وَلِبَاسُهُمْ فِيهَا حَرِيرٌ. And silk garments Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give to them. وَقَالُوا الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي أَذْهَبَ عَنَّا الْحَزَنَ. And once they have entered into Jannah, and inshallah may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst them, they will say, all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has removed from us all sort of sadness and grief. Living in the dunya is not easy. You have to face problem after problem, difficulty after difficulty. You solve one thing, another thing pops up. Solve this one, 10 more things pop up. Sometimes it's like you don't want to get out of bed. So وَقَالُوا الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي أَذْهَبَ عَنَّا الْحَزَنَ. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has removed this grief and anxiety and worry and concern from us. إِنَّ رَبَّنَا لَغَفُورٌ شَكُورٌ. Our Lord is verily, He is the most forgiving and the most thankful and appreciative. When a person does something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not simply that Allah is saying that, oh, you have to do this. Number one is that it benefits us, and on top of that, Allah is appreciative and thankful that we did that. Even though it doesn't benefit Allah, it benefits us. So even for the smallest deed, Allah is willing to reward us with so much of reward. Right? إِنَّ رَبَّنَا لَغَفُورٌ شَكُورٌ الَّذِي أَحَلَّنَا دَارَ الْمُقَامَةِ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. That Rabb who has decorated the everlasting abode, right? Through His fadl and His grace. لَا يَمَسُّنَا فِيهَا نَصَبٌ وَلَا يَمَسُّنَا فِيهَا لُغُوبٌ. And there is no worry and there is no fatigue. There is no fatigue that will One is the worry and the concern of the mind, right? And then there is the fatigue of the body. No, Jannah is not like that. There's no worry and concern of the mind, and the body will simply enjoy pleasure after pleasure, and it will continue to enhance and enhance and enhance. This is the type of Jannah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for believers. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst them. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the strength to live our lives in accordance to His commandments, that we are competing with one another in goodness in the life of this world, so that Allah may reward us with goodness in the hereafter. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst the people of Jannatul Firdaus. And the reward that this last category will get is what? That they will be given Jannah without any reckoning, without any hisab. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst this category. That when a person will strive in the life of this world, that is the level of reward that they will receive in the akhirah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst them. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen.